Welcome to MLS Round-Up from We Are Soccer. I'm Craig Hearn, and I'm joined, as usual, by our soccer syndicate scout, Brooks Lambier. Brooks, how you doing this week, buddy?
I'm good, Craig. It was quite an interesting week of MLS matches, and now that we're rolling here towards the end of the season, with each team having 3-4 matches left, it's going to be interesting. A lot's on the line. Start with LAFC in Seattle tonight when we talk about those upcoming matches later, and then a lot more on Wednesday night.
Yeah, man, you took the words out of my mouth. The MLS regular season is it's almost over. It's coming to a close, as you said. 3 to 4 games left for each team, and there's a lot of teams fighting for their playoff positions, fighting for their playoff lives. So what we'll do tonight is we'll chat about a couple of the games that happened over the weekend that have an impact on that race, and then there's 11 games happening this week, midweek. So we can kind of look at those and see which ones stick out to you and which ones will really impact the playoff race.
Yeah.
Why don't we jump in with some of those games that happened over the past weekend, as you said? Why don't we go with Columbus versus New York Red Bulls, with Red Bulls winning 2-1. What was your thoughts on that one, man?
Yeah, so I mean, like we've talked about in the past, and like a lot of people, working for the Red Bull commentators and everything, they've kind of said, hey, like there's 7-8 games left in the season. Like Red Bull have to go on a run. They have to go on a run, and they have to get points from each match, whether it's a point or three, to make the playoffs. And going into Columbus is never an easy task, and to come out with a 2-1 victory was huge for them. I mean, Caceres Jr. scored in the 7th minute, Barry for Columbus in the 18th, and then Sean Nealis, the college boy, in the 87th minute scoring. So, for NYRB to come out of that match and get points is huge. And that puts them now 6th in the table, tied with Atlanta, who's 7th. Probably just on goal differential or something. That's why they're 6th. But then you have New York City FC, who, we'll talk about here in a second, who won 6-0 against DC United, just jumped them a point. So, these teams are fighting for their lives. I mean, let's look at the table now. No one's catching New England because they have 70 points. So the next closest teams are Philly and Nashville with 49 points. You have Orlando at 47. And then you have NYCFC at 44, NYRB 43, and Atlanta 43. Oh, and Montreal is also at 43, which blew the line. So you need to get points from these last 3-4 matches. And Red Bull have done that, and they're fighting for their lives, and they want to make the playoffs. And I'm interested to see how it goes. Columbus has gone in the total opposite direction. Injuries have killed them. Caleb Porter, I think someone in the family caught COVID, so he hasn't coached the last few games. Not going to say that's a reason why they've gone backwards. Injuries have been a huge factor for them. But it's like we talked about before. Caleb with the Portland Timbers after he won MLS Cup back in 2015 didn't make the playoffs this year. It's kind of looking like that's going to happen to him again. And that was the first time ever when Caleb won in 2015 with Portland. The next year in 16, that the first time ever a team won the MLS Cup and didn't make the playoffs the following year. It looks like it's going to happen again in Columbus.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And you're right, though. I mean, missing someone like obviously the coach, but missing Caleb Porter from the sideline after having close contact, we'll call it, for COVID is a big deal. And you're right. A couple of weeks ago, you and I predicted the Columbus Crew would probably pull it together. They'd get their act together, and they'd probably put a string of wins together, get some points, and get in the playoff. They've gone in the opposite direction. They find themselves in 11th position, dropping like a stone. Goal difference of -4. Not so good. Looks like they're going to miss out on playoffs there. And as you said, Red Bulls put a string of wins together. Them climbing the table. Right now they're in 6th, tied for 6th with Atlanta. A game in hand over Montreal, who's also tied there for 6th. But yeah, man, looks like they're doing. That's when you want to get hot, right? Towards the end of the year, get hot, get some points, get into the playoffs, and do some damage. So, good for them. Some of the other games that happened, as you mentioned, was NYCFC versus DC United. New York City FC winning 6-0 over DC United. What happened, man? What was going on in that game? 6 goals. What happened, man?
I think just Ronnie Dyler probably just said, hey, we need to win games, boys. We're good enough to win. We've played not so great soccer the past couple weeks, and we've dropped games and points we should have earned. And they came on and gave DC United a nice schlacking, that's for sure. And or shellacking, maybe that's what the term they use. But Listen, DC United was a team that was always kind of on the bottom of the playoff line in there, and they've kind of gone a little south as well. So this is, I mean, they're not out of it by any means because they're at 41 points, sitting in ninth. They're 3 points above Miami and Columbus, who are at 10 and 11. So this is, DC needs to win some games, but NYFC, said, hey, we lost to our rivals in the New York Derby, and we gotta pick it up after that. So, they're in the right direction. The question is, can they sustain, keep getting points these last 3 or 4 games of the season? So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think NYCFC, New York City Football Club. I think they'll get enough points. They'll get in. They'll creep into that 5th or 6th position for sure. Whether DC United do or not, we'll see how they bounce back from that slacking, as you put it. 6-0, man. It takes their goal difference for the year down to +1. So we'll see what they can do. Let's jump over to the West. So we had Seattle versus Sporting Kansas City, number 1 versus number 2 in the West there. Sporting Kansas City taking that game 2-1. What's your thoughts there, man? I mean, that's a good win. I know both of them wanted to go at it. Both of them wanted to win that. They're both, let's be honest, they're both in the playoffs there with 50, 58 and 55 points. Seattle first. But what are your thoughts on that game? Big game there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're Peter Vermees and SKC going in this game and you're going into Seattle, you're like, we need a result, boys. Like we need a point. I mean, heck, you got 3, which is great. And if I'm Peter, I'm telling, hey, we're only 3 points behind Seattle. Seattle has to play at LAFC tonight, and they probably have a few tough games as well. I think they maybe have one more with Vancouver they have to play, and the Cascadia rivalry is always tough. And like we've talked about with the parity of this league, there's no easy games. We've seen the past couple games as Chicago Fire and FC Cincy are eliminated for the playoffs, but they've come out of nowhere and scored a crap ton of goals, and they've actually won and actually got some points. So for Peter Vermees and SKC to go in and win 2-1 in Seattle is huge. And if I'm Peter Vermees, I'm like, hey, this is possible for us to get the 1 seed in the Western Conference, which potentially could give me a home game for every game until we get to MLS Cup. I mean, that was huge. So, if we're like an SKC perspective, like that's the perspective I'm looking at, is we're still on the hunt for the 1 seed in the Western Conference. Like we need to win.
I mean, I love that. He could have gone in with, hey, let's just make sure we don't have any injuries. We're firmly cemented in a playoff spot essentially here. But he went in and said, let's get these 3 points. Let's see what we can do. And yeah, I mean, it's big to get every game at home in the playoffs. That's huge. Absolutely huge. So I love the fact that they went out and went at it and they got the win. The other game that happened in the West that we're going to chat about, San Jose versus Vancouver, 1-1. Vancouver currently sitting 7th right now in the West, sitting on that line, 2 points ahead of Real Salt Lake. San Jose find themselves 7 points back in 10th. What was your thoughts on a 1-1 game?
Yeah, so I mean, let's take it from Vancouver's perspective. Like we kind of talked about in the last couple of shows, is they were kind of sitting below that playoff line. Now they're above it. They're 2 points above RSO, who sit in 8th place. Obviously, LAFC can jump them if they beat Seattle tonight because they're at 9th and with 41. But Vancouver just getting points when they can. A huge win against the Portland Timbers in Providence Park, 3-2, which is a huge result because it's so hard to win at Providence Park in Portland. And San Jose, was kind of on that playoff, above the playoff line, just below it, and they've kind of dropped a few games. So this is kind of do or die now for the rest of the time, for San Jose, is they need to get results. They need to get 3 point, if they have 4 games left, I mean, they probably at least need to grab 3 points out of those 4, in 3 of the 4 matches, they need to get 3 points, wins, and then maybe get a point from something. So that's 10 points there, 3, 6, 9, 10. So if they get 10 points, that puts them at 47, but that may not even be enough. They may have to win out because of how crazy the West is right now. So, keep San Jose in there, but they're cutting it close. But from Vancouver's perspective, we could have all 3 Cascadia teams in there, which is always an interesting time when Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver all make the playoffs. So,
Let's jump into the upcoming games. You kind of mentioned a little bit there. LAFC Seattle playing currently as we're filming this. Let's talk LAFC. Bob Bradley. Do you think they are going to get the job done? Do you think he can get it done? And if he doesn't, what happens?
So that'll be a tough one, because I mean, there's a lot of reports. People have said, "Hey, does who stays and who goes?" I mean, is it a front office person that leaves? And they've talked about kind of the trifecta of like, will Vela and Bradley stick together? Does one leave? Does Vela leave? Because they talked about Liga MX teams wanting to purchase him from LAFC, to him to go play in Mexico. Which would be a huge loss to, honestly, the league, in my opinion. And I think it'd be a huge loss for LAFC, because how do you replace a guy like Carlos Vela and what he's meant to that club ever since they began? But you don't want to lose a guy like Bob Bradley, because he's meant so much to your club as well, because he's helped start the club. So it's, for Bob Bradley, I mean, it's up in the air, but we all know Bob wants to make he's going to fight to the end to make the playoffs. And again, if they get in, as a 7-6 seed, I mean, no one wants to play them, because they know they can turn it on right away. And if you give them a few weeks, you give them 7, 8, 10 days to rest to get the players, I mean, that's dangerous to face an LAFC team like that. They come out of nowhere and score goals. And they have shown that they can do that. So,
well, a couple of weeks back, we did an MLS Round-Up, and we both said, yeah, most likely LAFC will put some wins together. They'll get into the playoffs. Yeah. They just haven't been able to do that properly. I think they've dropped a couple games here and there, and it just hasn't come together. I don't know if I'm changing my mind here if they get in, but it doesn't look like it's coming together, in my opinion.
I will say this, like a big thing with like Seattle right now is, if you kind of look at the lineup they're playing tonight, they're currently playing, because the game just kicked off at 10:30. You're playing Will Bruin at your center forward position. Ruiz hasn't played, but Freddie, they're playing, they're throwing the diagram here shows it's a 5-4-1. So a box in the middle, Rodan and Montero underneath Bruin, and Atencio, the young academy player with Kellen Rowe, and Smith has done well, wingback, and Alex Rodan. It's an interesting that Seattle can roll out different lineups like this and still get results. I mean, even with Nico Ladero on the bench and some other guys, Danny Leyva, their young academy guy, and Benazet, one of the veterans they have. So that's a tough lineup that LAFC is going to have to face, but no Carlos Vela tonight in the lineup for LAFC. So, Arango has to step up. Does Atuesta step up? And some of the younger guys that have been playing and scoring goals for him. And, that's going to be the question for LAFC. But it's always tough to get a win at Bank of America Stadium, California Bank, our Bank of California. So, Seattle's got a tough one tonight, but that's a tough lineup though with Seattle, because the dancing bear, Will Bruin, always finds a goal every now and then.
Love it. Give me a prediction right now. Do LAFC get in? Do they get in the playoffs?
Oh, okay. Let's see. They're going to give me a score prediction over 6 minutes into this one. Let's see. I think so let's see. If I go back to the standings and where they're at currently right now,
they're already 31 games into their season.
They're 31. So they have probably 3 games left, because usually it's 34, 35 they're playing. I mean, listen, RSL is always a tough team, but they're always, up for, a slip here and there. Minnesota, with the players they have, they've shown that they can go on like 3-game losing streaks, So, I mean, if Minnesota, who has 31 games right now with LAFC, if they lose they have 3 matches left, lose the last 2 of the 3, I mean, that puts them at, if they win, that's 48. If Bob Bradley can go and win, his last 3 matches here, or 4, that could put them over them. So, I think a team above them slips. I'm not going to lie. Like, I think a team like Minnesota or RSL slips, and that puts them into the playoffs, in my opinion.
All right. I like it. All right. We'll keep track and see if that happens. All right. Other games coming up this week: Revs versus Colorado. What is it about that game that stands out to you, man?
I think the interesting thing with this game is, obviously there's no implications on, I mean, for Colorado, there's where are we going to be in the playoffs? Like, what's our spot? Can we jump? SKC? Can we maybe catch Seattle? Those teams are going to fight for the top 3 spots, because I think Portland's way too far. And same with LA Galaxy at 46 points at 4th and 5th, and Minnesota at 45 in 6th place. But I think that one's an interesting one, because I don't think, I just feel like stepping into the season, people didn't feel like Colorado was going to be in this position. Maybe obviously the players in the organization probably felt differently, but I don't think anyone was expecting Colorado to be a top 3 team in the Western Conference. And then, I mean, the Revs had a good run last year and they got bounced in the playoffs. But it's a good matchup. Like, I mean, I definitely want to watch this one just because it's the Supporter Shield winner. They're going to win the Supporter Shield, the Revs, against a tough Colorado team. It's just going to be a good matchup. And I know Colorado's had some shaky, games the last few, but I'm interested to see, if Colorado can go steal 3 points or a point from New England.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I like the matchup as well. All right, DC United versus New York Red Bulls. Obviously, as we talked about earlier, DC United 9th in the East. They need to get some points. Red Bulls 6, climbing the table. Do you think Red Bulls get it done against United, or is DC United going to steal some points there?
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one, because like you said, 6th and 9th, but if DC United wins, they'll jump New York Red Bull, and that'll put them at 44, tied with NYCFC. And obviously the games will be pending because everyone they'll be playing, so there'll be movement. But I think that's another one. I think that's going to show how resilient is New York Red Bull going into DC United and stealing points. How are DC United going to react after losing to NYCFC, the other New York club, 6-0? I mean, that's, and that was in New York. DC had to travel to New York City. But that's going to be the question is, you're looking at these teams, how resilient are you going to be down the stretch? That's the question with all these, Eastern Conference teams right now, just within a point or 2 of each other, or 3. So, listen, DC United has the capability to do it. I mean, Kamara, who's always been a proven goal scorer in the league, but you have these guys, like we talked about before, of New York Red Bull, with college guys, MLS veterans, some internationals mixed in with some homegrown players that have just not given up. And with their new international head coach, they brought in this past year, I mean, they just haven't given up. They haven't faltered. They haven't said, hey, we were so many points out of it. There's no way we can do this. They believe. And when you catch a team with belief, like you've seen Seattle in the past couple of years when they haven't started well and they've had to really push at the end of the season to win games to get into the playoffs or to get a better, seed in the Western Conference. That's kind of at New York Red Bull right now. I don't think anyone really expected them to be in the playoffs, but I mean, but themselves, but, it goes to show, like, if you can push at the end of the season, you can put yourself in a good position to really excel. And maybe, they probably won't make MLS Cup because I don't think anyone's beaten New England, but, like Seattle's pushed in the past and they've made MLS Cup, but, they can make a good run in the Eastern Conference playoffs and then set themselves up for something nice next year.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. All right. Off to the West. We've got SKC number 2 versus number 5, SKC versus LA Galaxy. This should be a pretty good game as well, man. As we said, Sporting Kansas City making a little bit of a run here. They want to see if they can catch Seattle, get that number 1 spot in the West. And LA Galaxy currently sit 5th at 46 points. So they're not 100% safe yet with teams, behind them fighting for that spot. So LA Galaxy need points. Do you think the Galaxy can pick up points against Sporting Kansas City this week?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in everyone's mind this is why you signed Chicharito, right? Yep. I mean, he scored, I think he's at 13 or 14 goals. He's kind of slowed down a bit after the All-Star break. Mm-hmm. But, this is why you signed Chicharito Hernandez, and this is why you brought in Greg Vanney to, a guy that has took TFC to a bunch of MLS Cups, won a few. In bad years with TFC, he got him out of the bottom and he got him into the playoffs so they could do something. Like I think he played at UCLA, I believe. I think he's a California guy, if I'm not mistaken. I think he played for the Galaxy as well. I think someone will have to check on that. But
I think I've read that. Yep.
Yeah. So this is like Greg Vanny's first year, and how can I make an impact? Because LAFC has been running the show in LA for the last 3 or so years. And really Galaxy have really been really an irrelevant team besides signing Zlatan and having Zlatan time over there, which is always fun to watch. But
Yeah.
um, and then this is the thing with SKC is, again, this is a game they need to win to catch Seattle, and it's tough to play, to beat Sporting Kansas City at home. And like I've talked about, Peter Vermees is a very competitive guy and he wants to win. And SKC, I think, have something to prove, because I feel like they feel they haven't performed to their standards and the players they have these past couple years in the playoffs. So, they want MLS Cup too. They want a shot at the New England Revs, who I think are going to win the Eastern Conference and go to MLS Cup. So, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's a pretty big game right there. Another big one, number 6 versus number 7, Minnesota United versus Vancouver Whitecaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, number 6, number 7, they're a point apart. The goal difference for the season is 1 goal apart. I mean, this is two teams who are evenly matched up here. Who do you see coming out with the points of this one, man?
I mean, this is a really tough one, because which Minnesota team is going to show up on this day? Is it going to be the one we've seen the past couple games where they've gotten some results, or is it going to be the one where they're like, oh, no one likes us, we all feel bad, like, oh, like they're going to sit and pout, and like after they lose, they're just going to, which team we're going to get from Minnesota? And meanwhile, Vancouver, it's just like, well, shit, like we just need to get results and win. Like, listen, we don't have our head coach and our head assistant coach anymore. The stuff has changed a bit. Brian White's done well for us. They've gotten goals from a lot of different guys, and they figured things out. They're still playing the 3-back system. The 3-4-3 they're playing, or 3-5-2. They've figured things out. So it's can Vancouver stay hot and still get points and kind of make a run and see if they can. I mean, heck, if they win, and Portland doesn't get a result, they jump Portland and they move up into 4th. So, that's how very close this Western Conference is. Yeah. So, but you have to beat Minnesota and Minnesota, which is tough. Yep. So that's going to be an interesting game to see.
Agreed. Speaking of 4th place, currently the team who sits there is Portland Timbers, who take on San Jose, who are currently in 10th at 37 points. So Portland right now are on 46 points with -3 goal difference. San Jose are 10th, as I said, with 37 points, -7 goal difference. I mean, if you and I are being honest, probably Portland comes out of this with some points, as they are at home to San Jose. That will cement their place, in my opinion, as that 4th place team in the West and in the playoffs. What are your thoughts on that game?
I think that one's very much a trap game, to be honest with you, because I think San Jose is a team on a mission. They're still in it. They play a very interesting system. They do the man marking, and TS Almeida has very good ideas, and he changes things up all the time depending on opponents. So yeah, I think that's a game where you can't, if I'm Portland at home, you can't just say, hey, like this is an easy 3 points for us, because in the past, San Jose has shown that they can, get results in Portland, or, beat the Timbers at home in San Jose. So, this is a game that Portland, in my opinion, needs to win, because they need to inch closer to Colorado to pull away from the rest of those 5, 6, 7 teams, and even the, 8, 9 teams. So, this is an important match for Portland, and, Steve Clark's got to be on his game, whether Valeri is the super sub they're going to use and he gives you something. Blanco needs to step up and give Portland a little bit, in the starting 11, and, whether it's Niasgoda or Felipe Mora, like just they need, or Yimi Chara, I know Diego Chara's fine. Like he's always a steady Eddie for him, but Portland just need to stop, I think, just botching stuff, and they just need to play consistently and play to the standard that they can play to. Because if they don't, San Jose is going to come in and steal 3 points, or at least a point from them.
Yeah, and I mean, San Jose need those points obviously to climb the ladder there. See if they can get in. They would, if they got 3 points, they'd still find themselves in 10th. So they've got some work to do if they want to get in, but. I like that. It could be a trap game for Portland. We'll see what happens. Well, I mean, this week, as we said, lots of games happening. there's going to be lots of movement. We've talked about positions. We've talked about who goes where, dropping, raising. We'll see. I don't think we'll look at the table next week when we do MLS Roundup, and it won't look anything like what it looks now.
Probably not. Besides the top three in the Western Conference.
Yeah, besides the top of the Eastern Conference, that's absolutely right. But that's what makes MLS so much fun, man. It's the parity, it's the movement. Teams go on runs, put points together, and it's great. It's absolutely great to see. I can't wait for the playoffs to start. And as we talked about, we're going to have to do some deep dives into the rounds and the teams and the form of those teams as they roll through the playoffs.
Yes.
All right, man. That'll wrap us up for another week of MLS Roundup from We Are Soccer. Brooks, thank you so much for joining. Very much appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it, and looking forward to a chaotic next week of talking about MLS.
Exactly. All right, buddy. Take care. Cheers.
Peace. Cheers.